Jets receiver and fabulous talker, Brandon Marshall, has weighed in with an interesting take on the Golden Boy, Tom Brady. He says he will concede Brady is the best quarterback ever, but refuses to call him the best player ever. Marshall says, quote, when I think about a player, I think about a guy that I can put at corner, safety, defensive end, a guy that I can put back on a punt return. That, to me, is the best player ever, close quote. Dan, I'm convinced to be with Marshall on this. Are you?
Man, this is a rough week to do that, right? When you're talking about the winner of all time cementing his legacy. But what's he saying there, right? He's just saying athletes, right? And Tom Brady can't really run. Tom Brady can't do any of those other things that he described. It is an interesting messenger, though, Mike, because Brandon Marshall might be the single greatest athlete I've seen in that sport who hasn't played in a single playoff game, has been with several teams and hasn't done any kind of winning, and he's going after what it feels like here, the ultimate winner.
Oh, I don't think he's going after him at all. I think he's given some context. He's providing context and a little bit of common sense. I mean, he's just saying, just think about this when you talk about greatest player. Tom Brady, by winning that game the other night, seems to me to be the greatest quarterback. Although Joe Montana, by the way, says he's not putting Brady on that list or top that list, and he won't put himself there either, and he's the guy. You know, and it's interesting, if you're going to make an argument for a quarterback, you might make an argument still for Joe Montana. But I think that Brandon Marshall's argument is a great discussion because it points to a guy like Dion, a guy like Jim Brown, speaking of athletes who excelled in two sports, a guy like Walter Payton, a guy like Reggie White, who he points out who had to do more things on a football field, was asked to do more than Tom Brady. So I don't think he's taking a shot at Brady. He's providing some context for these over-the-top conversations we have.
One of my favorite stories, you mentioned Deion Sanders, who would be in this discussion of greatest athletes to have ever played football. One of my favorite stories, walking off a muddy field in San Francisco. Dave Wanstead and Steve Walsh tried only one side of the field because Deion covered the other side of the field. Muddy field, his uniform is relatively clean as we're walking off it because he didn't have to do anything. And I asked him if he ever played a game quite that boring, and he laughed and said, yeah, it's called baseball.